Well, hey, everybody, this is your co-host of the Dream Big podcast with Bob Goff and friend Scott Schimmel, and I'm here with my friend Bob Goff.
Hello, everyone. I'm so glad we're together again today. I love these podcasts, and in particular, to be able to introduce you to my friend Darla.
Yeah, she is the epitome of someone who does not wait for permission to get invited somewhere when she has her sights set on a big ambition of hers.
Yeah, she just assumes that she's invited, and I think if you're listening and you have ears, you are too.
Yeah.
You're not invited everywhere, but you're not uninvited as many places as you've kind of actually uninvited yourself to, because you're looking for validation, you're a bunch of strangers to say it's okay or likes or whatever. Just assume that God has put you here. You've got these beautiful ambitions and go after them. And what you're going to hear from Darla is a couple like no's that she just didn't settle for. She's like going to take no for an answer.
Yeah. And some people I think are wired that way. They just don't have that chip of worried about what other people think. But for many of us, it takes just a lot of courage to take action on our big dreams.
And there's appropriate boundaries to that. I mean, if you don't take no for an answer enough, you'll actually get a restraining order in some contexts. But what if you say, I'm going to actually not let the circumstances dictate what my passions are, but to say, I know what my passions are. They're beautiful ambitions. If faith is your thing, then you'd say, I know why I'm doing what I'm doing. And then when somebody says, no, you don't see that as an impediment, it's just the next thing to overcome. And nobody does that as good as Darla. We have been friends since college days. And I'm just always astounded, even today, with the things that she's done with her life. And they've all happened, if you can relate to this as you're listening, they've all happened on the backside of a no.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is one of the conversations that you've had with a friend that I was enraptured by. I think her story is fascinating. So we are excited for you to get to know Darla Anderson.
Hey, everybody. I'm with my friend Darla Anderson today, and you have got to meet Darla. Hi, Darla.
Hi.
Hey, we have quite a fun history together that has spanned literally decades, and you are one of my all-time favorite people. You're just authentic and true and candid, and have done some beautiful things with your life. We met back in college days, wasn't it? I'm kind of reaching back to, when was it?
Yeah, it was, I think it might have been either our senior year of college. I think it was.
Yeah. And then we all lived down at the beach in San Diego, and we were trying to figure out life and all that. And then I married Sweet Maria Goff, who was among this gathering. There was all these amazing women on one side of the alley and all these homely looking guys on the other side of the alley. And each of us married each of them. And then you moved up to the Bay Area from San Diego and got a job at a little startup company. What was the name of that company?
It was called Pixar at the time.
Go figure.
It's called Pixar.
Yes, well, not a lot of people have that. And I don't think you just were answering phones. I think you moved on to do some other stuff. So for the people that don't know you, what was your job at Pixar? And we're going to be talking about taking actions on your ambitions. And you had an ambition to do some work with movies. Can you tell us about it?
Well, yeah, I wanted to make art my whole life, and I wanted to make art that would change the world. Felt like that was my calling, which people didn't really understand in the 80s, the early 80s, when it was all about majoring in business and becoming a yuppie, which kids today probably don't even know what a yuppie is, but and people would ask me what I wanted to do, and I would say, I want to make art that will change the world. Yeah. Whatever that meant to me. But so, yeah, go ahead.
And so so you landed at Pixar. Now, was that easy to land or was that difficult? Because the thing about ambitions, everybody's got one, but it's taking action. Like they'll send a resume to somebody and somebody says no. And oftentimes I hear people say, well, God closed the door. I'm like, oh, baloney. Billy said no. That's the only thing that happened.
No, yeah, you probably don't remember the story, but I actually got what we call a thanks but no thanks letter, a TB&T. And
they just didn't think you had any talent for it.
Yeah, they I had sent a reel in on my Betamax,
Come on.
of the things I had done in San Diego, which were just a few commercials. And they sent me back a thanks but no thanks letter, like, I'm sorry, but no. But then I thought, oh, this is a clerical error. This is just a clerical error because because I would call them about every 6 months and they would take my call.
Oh, I love that. Tenacious. That's for people that have an ambition, instead of saying like, you got a thanks but no thanks letter, they'd say like, well, God's closed the door. I'm like, no, this is the beginning. I remember writing to the Pope and I asked like, can we meet? And one of his like head guys wrote back and said, absolutely not. I didn't think God closed the door. I thought I've got the right address. So you kept calling back. They kept taking your calls. And how did it happen that you got on board?
Well, I wanted to move from San Diego to be a part of Computer Animation's first ever full-length film, which everybody said was impossible. So I packed up my car and I drove up to San Francisco. And but then it took me a solid 2 years to get into Pixar. And everybody, 2 years. And everybody would say, you might want to put out some other resume.
Were you sitting at the front gate, eating sandwiches, saying, let me in?
No. Like for me, the strategy was to not appear as desperate.
Yes.
Act not too desperate. So I would call probably in my mind, it was about every 4 to 6 months or something.
Yeah.
I remember at one point, the producer who ended up being the producer of Toy Story, I wanted to take him out to lunch, as part of, to get to know me. And I had no money. So I had to empty out my quarters jar and put it together. And that added up to about $12.
Yeah.
So I was like, I hope what sandwich we ordered doesn't come, because I should take him out to lunch because I'm trying to get the job. And it came to exactly that amount. We went out to this little place called the Hidden City, which is also referenced in Monsters Incorporated, tiny cafe near Pixar. And I took Ralph Guggenheim out to lunch, and thank goodness it didn't add up to more than $10.
That's like such a great, it's always those little steps along the way that are the memorable ones. So you ended up getting the job at Pixar. And what was your first movie you worked on?
Well, I got the job, and then they said, well, you don't get to work on Toy Story. And I'm like, wait, I just spent 2 years of my life waiting to work. And by the way, I thought I was going to be somebody famous by the time I was 25, because I had been on my own, for so long. I thought my 25 was like anybody else's 40.
Yeah. Can you actually loop back to that for a moment? Because I think a lot of people hear stories of, achievement and all that and think that you were just born into a bed of tulips and then it just went awesome. You had amazing parents who were rooting for you the whole way. Can you just give a short arc of some of the background that you came from that got you to college, that got you to Pixar?
Yeah, the very, very top level story is that when I was 13, my mom died in a car accident, and I didn't really know my dad. And through a series of events, I ended up on my own by the time I was about 14. So I slept on people's couches and I did that kind of thing. But I always knew I would go to college. So then I went to Glendale Community College, and then I went to San Diego State. So that's
where we met at that impressive institution of higher learning.
That's right.
Yeah. So now you're at Pixar, you get in the door, you've got a employee ID, and then the one thing that you thought you were there to do, they said you're not going to do that. What was your job?
So I became the producer, then I promoted myself to be executive producer of what was called the Shorts Group, and we produced commercials. And ironically, then Pixar didn't want to have all its eggs in Disney's basket, so they were like, well, it would be great to have this side division going so that we can have a different revenue stream.
Yeah.
So I hired a ton of people. I was on my own, I was just on my own there because everybody was just really putting all their energy into getting Toy Story out the door. And
Did you just print your own cards? You said, I am the executive producer of this.
I mean, I had to ask them, but I said, basically, I'm doing the job, right, guys? And
one of the things that I've noticed about you, Darla, over decades is that you don't tend to ask for a ton of permission to go live your life. You have these dreams and ambitions, and you're not waiting to build consensus among everybody, that you see them. What is it inside of you that causes you to do that? How do you find that gear?
Well, I think for me, I always kind of had that. I was always a free spirit. I always wanted a big adventure in life. And then when my mom died, like the worst thing happened
Yeah.
that could ever happen. And so then it's super tragic, of course. I miss her still every day. But at the same time, it even reinforced the idea that there are no rules and you may as well go for it. You may as well go for whatever it is and have this. And also when somebody, and she was only 31. So when somebody dies when you're young and they're young, it's a big memo on living your life, living a big adventurous life. So you get that memo. I got that memo at a young age, and there is tragedy, but there's a lot of gifts in it too.
Somehow you found the ability to take these circumstances that weren't ideal, to have a strange dad, really a stranger to you, a mom that's gone, and you didn't get stuck by that. You thought, certainly because you're a very intuitive person, you have the ability to feel things deeply, but you were able to access your joy and not let that strap you, but to actually embolden you to say, actually, I'm not going to wait for permission to do this thing. And you didn't camp out in all the things that may have derailed some other people. How do other people find that?
I mean, I think that we all have that. We for sure all have a purpose. That's why we're here. We wouldn't be here if we didn't. And so I think you have to get very quiet. I remember one day, get quiet with yourself and really listen to whatever that voice inside of you is that's calling you to a different path or passion or whatever it is. I remember one day I was walking on the beach in La Jolla, and I wasn't hanging out with anybody, and everybody was off doing things. And I thought, gosh, I was having what we now call FOMO.
Yeah, it was before.
Yeah. And then the voice that was deep inside of me said, because I thought everybody was off to parties and I didn't really want to be at a party, but the voice deep inside me said, you are the party, like wherever you are.
Oh, well said.
Wherever you are, we can celebrate your life. And it was this deep-seated contentedness, but it was a 2-mile walk on the beach and lots of circumstances to listen to that voice.
Man, I am going to make a hoodie that says you are the party. I'll never have to work another day. Well, so then you got the word that you're going to move from shorts to a little bit longer version. How did that transition happen?
Well, I was doing commercials. Toy Story comes out. Yay, big success. First ever, revolutionary. It was very, very, very exciting. And then the second ever animated feature was starting to get going. It actually started going before Toy Story was done. They were starting to write it and everything. And they started bringing in other producers. They were interviewing other people to produce it. And in my heart, there's no way I felt like I was ready, or in my heart and my head, there's no way I was ready to produce a feature film in any way, shape, or form. But then I was like, oh, well, a lot of the people they were interviewing were peers of mine, kind of. Like, that's how I felt. And so I thought they're amazing. And I have even more experience than they do because I've been running this little division on my own. So I wrote an email to Steve Jobs, because he owned Pixar then, called Deep Thoughts by Darla Anderson.
Nice. How long was it? Is this a couple paragraphs or a couple pages?
Paragraphs saying you should consider me for the feature. And then if you want me to keep going.
Oh yeah, totally. Go girl.
Then he he said, well, what do you know? And, how, and I said, well, what does anybody know? There's only ever been one computer animated feature film. So, and by that time I was probably about 34, I'd say. And so he said, all right, well, write me a business plan on what it would entail to, because these feature films are tentpole films. They're huge budget, lots of promotional partners, lots of consumer products, lots of park activity. So it's like running a little, and not by little, I mean a large business.
Yeah, if you, for instance, like to scales, anybody ever quantified how much is involved in a big feature film with all the ancillary things?
Yeah, it's big. It's a worldwide phenomenon. All that. So I had to write up a business plan, which I did, and then and he went through it with me, and I enlisted some of my friends to help me write it. So
Yeah, perfect.
down at the coffee shop writing up a business plan, and it was pretty good. It was really accurate. And then he let me come on but he didn't give me the role of producer. Like I kept getting, it was incremental. I got the job as associate producer.
Yes.
So he didn't even let me be, or it wasn't just Steve, it was like they assigned me associate producer, and they said, we're going to keep interviewing for producer. And then, Disney said that they suggested they hire me on as associate producer. And then this is what happened. Yeah. Steve and Lawrence Levy, our CFO, came back to me and they said, Darla, we feel terrible because we told you that you would be the producer of A Bug's Life. And, but Disney feels like you're not quite experienced, and why don't you take the role as associate producer for a while? And I said, sure, okay. And they said, okay. And I said, you're really okay with it? And I said, yeah. Well, A, they're right. I don't have experience. B, I don't have any leverage right now. I've only ever produced 30 seconds of it. And I'm fine with that.
Man, I love your humble spirit, because you could have just said, well, no way, and, knock something off the table. But I love that you've always had that servant kind of attitude, just available. And I think that's super important for particularly a generation of people that want it to happen immediately. To hear that in fast forward, it sounds like it happens like boom, 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 boom. But actually the reality is some disappointments and some turns. Instead of like copping an attitude, you just said, well, let me serve. So how the transition then from associate producer to the person that actually produced A Bug's Life?
Well, I was doing it, and then I was the only person there. So they were interviewing for producer, but they never really found one. So one day I said, so it's me, right? I mean,
can I print new business cards? I love you just assume, again, it's like assuming that you're invited, just assuming that they're going to take you eventually onto Pixar. Even though you didn't get the first job you wanted, you took another one. Have a humble heart, but clear on what you want to get done, and then take these things, and then just assume I should be the producer of probably one of the biggest films in its time, wasn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And going back to when I took the commercial executive producer job, what was great about that, the door closed on Toy Story, but so I said yes to the commercial. I went actually home for a day to think about it, like whether I should really do that, because it wasn't my goal. So I thought about it, and I thought, it's still a great opportunity. I just wanted to be part of really good art, and I had to hire a whole new team. I was unsure. But if I had gotten what I wanted, which was a coordinator or a manager on Toy Story, they would never have seen me as somebody able to lead a whole film, because in the commercial group, I was running my own division on my own. So that door that closed actually is the thing that leapfrogged me over about 10 years worth of experience. So.
Beautiful. Boy, man, I want to underline that in my mind when there's it seems like a setback, to be patient, to see this actually might surprise me. So you did another movie after A Bug's Life. Which one was that?
That was Monsters Incorporated.
I've heard of it. Does that happen when you finish one and A Bug's Life? And didn't you win all the important awards and like?
Yeah, I
I
think
think
so.
I.
Well, that was a big year. It was we didn't win every award with Monsters, but it was one of my favorite ever films because it came out 6 weeks after 9/11. And the
Oh
thing with
wow!
that film is the first big thing that happened, in a big social way. That nobody had been in the shopping malls, nobody had been going out anywhere really after 9/11, and that film with its message of that laughter and positive energy
Yes,
can overcome darkness. Um, so nobody knew how it was going to do. I just loved the idea that
boy, the
that is the thing
unfolding.
that came out, and that goes back to I
Yeah.
want to do art that will change the world. And none
Yes.
of these things seem like there's something that will change the world, and yet here we are, 6 weeks after 9/11, with a very imaginative, beautiful film that carries the message of love and positive energy, and laughter will overcome. So
Yeah.
that was very rewarding.
You finished that movie, and then is there any breaks in between these? Do you get to like go and sit on a beach somewhere, or is it just are you spinning up the next one when you finished A Bug's Life? Is it Monsters Inc.'s already flying, or is there a downtime in between?
Between A Bug's Life and Monsters Inc., there wasn't downtime. I took just 2 weeks off, which was not advisable, except that I was young. Um, and between months, then I took a break after Monsters Inc. for about 6 weeks, I'd say.
Yeah.
And then I jumped onto Cars, I think.
I've heard of that one too.
I think I did
Tell me
Cars after
about
that.
that. So
Yeah,
was that
Monsters Inc. Cars, yeah.
now you had two big movies under your belt? Was that a natural one to get tapped for Cars, or does that take under this idea of taking action? Did you have to say, "Hey, listen, I'd really like to do that one," or were there other things that were getting your attention at the time?
Um, at that point in time, I was really open to whatever the company needed me to do. And we were in the middle of during that Cars time. It was an interesting time of were we going to be bought or sold to Disney, or how is that going to work out? And so that film, um, one of the reasons they wanted me on that film is because I don't really care about cars as as a passion. And I kept saying, but I don't really care about cars. And they said, but that's why we want you on the film, is because, so they wanted me on the film because they wanted it to appeal to everybody. And they wanted that strong voice in the room that said, yeah, but I don't care. I'm not a car geek. I like cars. I don't dislike cars, but I don't wake up thinking.
That's not your thing. Yeah. I remember you were so kind. You invited all the like small goths up when Cars was being like, I think you were still in the process of finishing that one, and you had a little reel and you brought us into a screening room. And then you took us back to where all of the different animation is done, and each person has their own pod and they get to create it in any way they want. Can you just tell me for a moment about that? And there was one secret one day. It seemed like we went inside some secret room somebody had.
Yeah, that I think that was a love lounge. If you crawled down there, there's a
That's it.
few of them back there. Yeah, well, back in the old building, the first building before we moved into the fancy one that now is, we've been there 20 years. But in the old building, the animators were housed. There was not a lot of money floating around, and the animators were all housed in kind of this giant warehousey, parking lotty loading dock area. So they just hodgepodged this, what we call the ghetto, the Anim ghetto. They hodgepodged this whole thing together, and it was so imaginative. They all built it themselves.
Oh, it was so beautiful. Like somebody had a gas station. Somebody else had like kind of a tiki motif going, something out of the Caribbean. And did one person have a volcano? Am I like remembering that wrong?
Yeah, I mean, well, so then that was the old building. The new building, they just carried that spirit on, and they all do it themselves. Now you have to go back there. Now it's crazy. It's like one double pod is as if a old, this is one you would really love, an old time plane. They all have narratives. An old timey plane crashed into the jungle, and so they have, spiders. The inside of it is like an old time plane, World War I or II-ish kind of plane,
Yeah.
all painted like that. They have like a little 16 millimeter reel going, and fog machines coming in with like it's smoke just happened.
No.
There's so many temples and castles. It's just, and all their own cost, all their own everything.
I think I love that for people in leadership to think about having your friends that you're working with be able to express and create an environment where they can actually thrive. That really struck it. So you're doing Cars now, and do each of these movies create a lot of stress as you're taking action? You have a beautiful ambition, but it doesn't come without a lot of stress in putting together something huge that's going to be worldwide.
Yeah, every movie is super, super, super stressful because what's interesting about every movie is a lot of people have said, how can you keep, doing this? Aren't you bored? And doing the same thing over and over again, but it's just so not boring because every story is so unique. So it's like surfing down a different wave every time because you have to know it's a new wave. Now you're reacting to a whole new storyline and plot line and mitigating circumstances. You have to, a lot of plates are going all at once and trying to figure it all out. And generally speaking, the future of the company is on each film.
Is that crazy? A lot of pressure. Yet you stay really positive in that. I know you have a really focused, direct side. We were talking just before we started about how people that can tap into a lot of joy and enthusiasm, oftentimes right underneath that is a ton of strategy. You know why you're doing what you're doing. And I would say that the hallmark of our friendship is you've always been a woman that knew why you were doing what you're doing, that there was a purpose behind it. And so how have you kept the stress in check? Like you've got I don't know how many hundreds of millions of dollars are involved, but like you've got a lot riding on this thing. And how do you keep accessing your joy?
Well, it's hard. I really struggled with it, honestly, if I'm being real. It was really difficult. And if I could go back in time, I would have Darla, the producer of Cars and all those films, do a lot more exercise and on a regular basis, because somebody with my personality type, which is like, go get them and big, that would have been good. But I do live in the beautiful Bay Area. So every weekend, my thing is the beach. It just lowers my stress to go out on the water, of any kind of water, or walk on the beach. So most weekends that I'm not working, you could find me walking on some local beach around here.
Oh, no, while you were doing Cars, wasn't Pixar doing another film, Finding Nemo? And tell me if this is true or not. Are you Darla, the Dennis Rotten daughter? For anybody listening, if you didn't know who Darla was, this is Darla. Now, wasn't that a backstory? Wasn't there kind of like you were gigging each other?
Yeah. Andrew Stanton, the director of Finding Nemo, and I always did practical jokes on each other. I did a huge practical joke on him.
What was it? What was yours?
Well, it involved the Today Show. Every morning back then, he watched the Today Show, and religiously with his family. He's a very structured human, unlike me. And so we all knew that he was watching the Today Show, and so we were out there casting. And he's a really good writer, so he was back writing on. This was I think towards the end of A Bug's Life. So we went to, how the Today Show tapes outside.
Yes.
We brought all these Andrew Stanton headshots and put them on the end of sticks. And everywhere the camera was, like anywhere Al Roker was, we stuck Andrew's head in. And,
yes.
And,
awesome.
during the Broadway, I mean, we were there for the whole 3 hours or 2.5, whatever it was back then. We put it above the screen. Andrew's head was everywhere. And so then we called him and said, hey, Andrew, we think you might be on the Today Show today. Or we made it. Go see if you can see us.
Yes.
Yes. So then his little son, Ben, who's now, living in New York and an actor, but he was a little 4-year-old then, said, they're watching, eating their cereal. And he's like, Daddy, I see you on TV, and there you are, and
Yes.
there you are, and there.
And
That
he
was probably
got,
the biggest one.
this was the payback, was naming that character Darla.
Yeah, there was ongoing back and forth with
Yeah.
Andy and I. And then the interesting thing about, and then I wasn't going to let them do it, and then Brad Bird, director of Incredibles, talked me into it. Fine,
Ah.
fine. The cool thing about Darla in Finding Nemo is she's played by a little girl actress then, she's probably adult now, named Lulu, and Lulu is the name of one of my sisters. Kind of a
Ah.
synchronicity. And
Ah. Well, tell us, what did you do next after Cars? I think you weren't done.
after Cars, I did Toy Story 3.
Oh my gosh, I'm just worn out. I've pretty much, you've just gone down the list of all the DVDs on everybody's shelf. Were you getting worn out at the time? Because you've done now several, 4 or 5 huge Pixar movies. You've been to the Academy Awards a number of times. You're like, are you ready to land the plane, or do you have tons of energy when you walked into Toy Story 3?
Toy Story 3, I actually had energy for that because I didn't get to be on Toy Story. So this kind of felt like a full circle thing. Even though I have my credit on Toy Story?
No, tell me.
Digital Angel. And I just really, really wanted to have a credit on the first ever animated film. And my team got it done. I really did very little on it, although strategically I made it so that my commercials team didn't have anything to do the summer that Toy Story was finishing, because I knew they'd need help. And so then my whole team, which is about 20-25 people at that time, jumped in and did it. I personally didn't do that much except to strategically make them available. So I went and begged for a credit.
Yes.
At the time said, well, you didn't technically officially do anything, so come up with something. So out of our nickname, Angel of Light, I said, how about Digital Angel? Because I, provided help. So I just love that that's my credit on that first ever animated film.
You have always been just pure joy. I just remember from college days to you stood with us at our wedding. Like each of these important, I just turned 60 and you've got a few things on your plate, and I walk into a room and you among friends are there. Well, for those listening that have read Everybody Always and story of a little boy that got abducted in Uganda by a witch doctor, and some horrible things happened when it was time to bring him back for the surgery. Do you know who came with me? It was Darla. She would be the first person to take what was actually a really courageous move to go to Uganda at 100 different levels and to get this little boy. And then the one standing in the Oval Office with Charlie is Sweet Maria and Charlie and me and Darla. And you have impacted my life and so many lives in such beautiful ways. Tell us what you're doing next. What is it that is on your plate now? Because you've left Pixar. And so what did you do next at Pixar? You did one last film.
I did, after Toy Story 3, which was a dream job. Then I produced Coco, which was the next dream thing to do. Which, remember, we used to spend so much time going down to Mexico.
Oh, yeah.
And so I've just always loved Mexico and everything about it, and the people. And
I remember on our when we were going to Uganda together to get Charlie, you were just coming or just going to scout the next storyline. And even though we're really good friends, when Toy Story 3 was happening, I said, can you tell me? You're like, absolutely not, but you are going to cry. And you made good on that. I cried like a baby. And you were actually scouting Coco. I don't know if that was right before or after we went, but.
Right before, yeah.
Yeah.
I went from Mexico to Uganda.
Yeah. So tell us about Coco. How was your energy holding up? Because now you've been at this for many years, but you bring a ton of joy. This idea of taking action, you bring enthusiasm to what you have. You obviously had another film in you because it was a huge hit.
Well, Coco, yeah, and Coco was, I mean, that's the penultimate of art can help change the world, because in terms of doing a film that honors a whole country and honors their beautiful cultural traditions was just a labor of complete and utter love. Uh, and so, and was so rewarding that so many people felt so connected to it on so many levels, both on the in the level of dealing with death and that there's hope after death and connectivity after death, and then enormously that while our country is building walls, the Coco felt like it was building bridges. So
Yeah, I can't help but see the connection back to you as a 14-year-old girl who's just lost so much and has a bright hope that you have this, and it's almost like Coco just captured a lot of that, like
it did,
looking
yeah.
towards the horizon. Did that occur to you at the time? Or you just think was that healing at all for you?
Um, yes, and yes, and you try to be on films with things that you just love because it's so much. They take so long. They're so hard to do, and so there's so many levels of that film. And what's interesting about a lot of films, a lot of art, is somehow when you make them so deeply personal or specific or culturally specific, there's some weird magic that then makes it extraordinarily universal, which tells you that we're all so much more alike than we are different on most important levels, which is something you talk about all the time in everything that you say.
Yeah, the ability to change, though, to move from doing what you'd been doing for how long was your run at Pixar?
25 years,
So,
exactly 25 years.
so to the date. So Coco was your last major project there, is that right? And then can you just give us a current update on what you're doing now? What are you dreaming about?
So I'm going off to, well, I just started at Netflix. I started officially on March 1. And so it's not been very long. It's only been about a month or so that I've been there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just want to, I'm full of hope and excitement that I can keep kind of doing things that I've been doing. It's kind of an extension of what I've been doing already. I want to make more films kind of like everything I've done.
Yeah,
But not
like
necessarily like, it doesn't have to be animation, it can be live action or
yeah, but
I'd love to do some more animation, but
it seems like the chord remains the same, though. You want to make movies that change people's lives, that impact the world.
yeah, and to like again, well, both all of the films. If you're doing art, uh, and you are serving this larger voice when you're making art. That is, you're trying to get out of the way of it. You're the conduit to tell the story, and you're shaping and guiding it. But it also, can be extraordinarily healing for people to go see a film together. And I love the family film market. It's because I just love that it's not, we don't make films. I don't make films for children. I make films for everybody. And my hope is that everybody comes to see them together, because there's such a wonderful communal feeling about watching. And I want people to get lost in the story together as a family or a chosen family or group.
Yes.
So I think that can be very healing.
And I'm just like reflecting back as we kind of wrap this up about how you started without that kind of family. Like you didn't have that support system. You had a whole bunch of things that would kind of mitigate in the opposite direction. And so as you're taking action on your ambition, you just said, you know what, I can actually do something. I'm going to create something beautiful, like the life that would have been beautiful to have led as a younger person. I can actually create that experience for people. I love that about you. I pretty much actually love everything about you, Darla. I just want you to know what a privilege it's been to do life for as many decades as it's been. And you are a voice I've always trusted because I see what you do in people's life, and you are strong and courageous, deeply kind. You're compassionate, incredibly sensitive, but so strong. Like you have the ability to feel things deeply, but you're just a strong, capable woman. I love that about you.
Well, thank you. And I want you to know, you can put this in your podcast or not, but you have always reached out to me all these years, and I would get a text on my birthday or whatever, or just you've been a constant in a world where I've had very few constants, and it's been just a positive. I don't know. I'm so there's a few people in my life, a small group of people in my life we've probably known 40 years, I'd say. Unbelievable.
Yeah,
At least
which is
40 years
awesome.
now, right? Yeah. So you've been this amazing constant for me, and you've reached out to me in a world where I've been abandoned so much in my formative years, not necessarily my adult years. You've just always been there. So I'm just so grateful for that. And I just can't use one of those. You're like chosen family. I feel like you're family.
Yeah, bingo. Same here. So, and if you're listening in and some of these things that resonate with you, you've experienced some pain or loss, you have a beautiful ambition, or you felt like you've been at that place in between, find a friend or two. Like, just be authentic. Lead with love. Just say, man, I'm actually hurting today. I'm actually feeling a little insecure, whatever it is, and develop those kinds of friendships and then celebrate them. Darla, thank you. I love you, girl. Have a great day.
Thank you. Love you too.
We want to let you know that this fall, we're doing a couple more live Dream Big workshops. Why? Well, hundreds of people have gone through them now, and their lives are being changed and their dreams are being realized. So we're just going to keep doing them. Mark your calendars for October 11th through 14th. It's 4 days at Onsite, where the team there will take you through a deep dive into the inner workings of your lives, and Bob will guide you through the Dream Big framework. Also, later that month, October 22nd and 23rd, 2 days live workshop in Atlanta, Georgia. We have more information on the website, dreambigframework.com. That is dreambigframework.com. Okay, so clearly Darla is not someone who waits for permission, but she also has this patient, humble side to who she is.
She does. This woman has got more going on, yet she makes time. And the people that seem to make time for others, that's one attribute of people that get a lot done. It's not a lost on me. The first thing God made, time. The last thing we make sometime is time. And to approach the life that she's lived with a humble attitude. One of the things about Darla, too, is she's living in constant anticipation. And I hope that you'll do that if you're listening. You don't want to be Darla and you don't want to be somebody else. You want to be you. And to say, who is it that God made me to be? What is it that I want to accomplish in my life? And what are the next steps? Not all the steps, because you might get a no, an inexplicable no. But don't just settle for that. But a word of the wise, don't settle for every yes you get. Just because it's a yes, it doesn't mean you need to walk through the door. But if you have clarity about why you're doing what you're doing, you'll know the next steps. And if you want some more clarity, get some counsel from some friends.
Well, that's a great point, because sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between a setback that tells you to be patient versus one that says, nope, you're in the wrong direction, buddy.
Yeah, what if you got the first time somebody said no? Well, actually, her name was Maria.
And the second time?
And the second time? No. But I knew what I wanted. I didn't want to do a creepy version of that. But to say persistent, I would go like, well, you're the one for me. And eventually, I think she yielded. But there's something beautiful about having clarity about what you want, because then it gives context to all the communications you get. If it's a no, I still have clarity about what I want and say, I'm just going to find another way to get there.
Well, yeah, it's not just about frenetic activity, the idea of taking action. It's not just being busy for the sake of being busy. It's this idea that you have your sights set on what's important to you and you keep going.
One of the things that's the head fake sometimes is we hear other people's story and they collapse down into a minute and a half of I had a setback, but now I've got the Academy Award. When in my life and in your life, it doesn't happen that way. The word suddenly appears 87 times in the scriptures. Nothing in my life has happened suddenly. I've got a couple pulled over for speeding. That happened suddenly. But other than that, things are going to take a while. And so don't be head faked by hearing the difficulties and the challenges, how they were overcome, and then the rolls, the credits, and everybody's great. That actually these things won't happen suddenly. It's going to take some time. You've got an ambition. You've had it for years. Go after it. You'll get a couple no's along the way. Stay after it.
Well, there's a book title that always sticks out to me: A Long Obedience in the Same Direction. That's what it's all about. Keep going in the same direction. Keep taking action. This month we have a giveaway for you. It's called A Handbook for Becoming an Action Figure. It's the idea of in 21 days, you can create habits of becoming somebody that gets stuff done. So go to the show notes, download that handbook. And Bob, what are some last words you have for us in terms of taking action?
Boy, stop getting ready. I think there's a lot of people that are spending times like getting ready. I'm getting ready. Man, get out on the ice. Take the dive, whatever it is, move from getting ready to like being ready. Because there's a lot of people that are stuck getting ready. I'm like, people, you're ready enough.
You're ready.
Let's go build the plane while we're flying it. But you got the wings on this thing. Let's go. And then don't be turned away by a couple setbacks. You know the direction you're headed. You're reminded about why you're doing what you're doing. Take the next step.
Well, if you're listening to that, this word is for you. Get ready, get up, and go.